Insurance Reform Task Force. Please call the roll.
Senator Alvarado.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Senator Storm. Senator Wilson.
Here in the room.
Senator Yates. Representative Branscombe.
Present in the room.
Representative Cantrell. Representative Pratt.
Present in the room.
Representative Sharp.
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Nemeth.
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Weber.
Present in the room.
I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Senator Alvarado, you wanted to maybe put a little something extra in the report if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Actually, there was just one thing I was considering during our discussions was regarding workforce and ability to be able to have personnel available in case another surge like this possibly happens, and God forbid it does. But in that instance, we had a lot of discussions about having the opportunity to have LRC staff cross-trained for that. And so I was thinking that might be a possibility of a recommendation for our group, is also to recommend that the consideration, if there's LRC staff that are willing to volunteer, that they would have the ability to be cross-trained for that purpose in the future. That would be one of the recommendations we could have.
Is there anyone who wants to discuss this? Representative Branscombe.
Yeah, one question I had: are there federal requirements on that, on the staff, on what staff could be used for unemployment insurance?
There is in some areas on what they can do and what they can't do. Yes, there is. And if he puts a blanket recommendation out there, then that would be discussed when, Representative Cantrell.
I'll just say I think it's important that the doctor among our group is recommending to us that we prepare in case of a surge, because we're hearing about this Omicron variant, and we should probably listen to the doctor that and form these recommendations in a way that is flexible enough for us to act if there is another surge.
Before we get started on the report, is there anything else that wasn't in the report, or you want to talk about that? Okay. So what we're going to do here is we have a report here, and we're going to have staff just summarize it and go through it. And then we will add what Dr. Alvarado wanted in this report. This will be what we turn into the legislature. They can take this and go forward with a bill or whatever they want to do with it, unless Chairman Weber and or I decide that we want to be more specific on exactly what we want to do, and then we would have to have another meeting to approve that. So without further ado, Janine, are you ready?
Yes. So you will find in the memo, can everybody hear me? Okay. So we summarized the testimony from various entities and organizations. At the June meeting, members were informed of unemployment insurance issues relating to small private providers and fraud. At the July meeting, the Labor Cabinet updated the members on the unemployment insurance system and processes. At the August meeting, the Auditor of Public Accounts presented the results of an audit of the unemployment insurance system. The members also heard from a constituent regarding issues receiving benefits and in-person appointments. The members also received a presentation from a nonpartisan group that studied unemployment insurance systems nationwide. At the September meeting, the Labor Cabinet provided another update and proposed unemployment insurance system changes. And then at the October meeting, the Labor Cabinet, the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and the Foundation of Government Accountability provided reform recommendations. And you'll find the issues are discussed in the memo on the various topics. And then toward the end of the memo are the list of recommendations that the task force received. And all the recommendations are listed based on what each of the various entities presented. And then the last two appendices are specifically the Kentucky State Auditor's recommendations for the Office of Unemployment. And then the second appendix is the Kentucky Chamber's recommendations to the task force. And I think that's it.
What we're going to do now is if there's anyone wants to discuss any of this, we will do that, and then we'll have a vote on if this is acceptable to give to the legislature. There will always be an opportunity to send to Chairman Weber or I something that you want to put in and we could maybe add as an addendum to this. But right now, is there anyone that wants to speak on this? Representative Cantrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of things I wanted to point out about the report. I'm glad we had a chance to look at it in advance. I spent a lot of time with this document yesterday, so thank you for that. These pages aren't numbered, but when you look at the under the recommendations, the first recommendation, first of all, I just want to say I think there's a typo in that first recommendation. When it says indexing number of weeks payable, tying that to the state unemployment insurance rate, I think it should say the state unemployment rate. If we can make that change,
Yeah, I got it.
if that's agreeable. And then I have some bigger picture input and concerns about this report. The first thing that I'll say about this is that it is probably less specific than I think a lot of us would like. It's not, if you look at some of these, reforming the UI tax system, that's not very specific. It doesn't give the public a lot of notice about what type of legislation we might see in the next legislative session, and develop ways to improve workforce participation. I know that's kind of a tough question to answer, and it's one that we're tackling in every committee that I'm on right now. But we've heard ways about how to do that, so we could be a little bit more specific in our recommendations. And I think we're a small group, and I think there's a lot of bipartisan ways that we could reach some consensus and develop some specific recommendations to our colleagues. And probably the biggest concern that I have with this report, and our staff mentioned this, we can only report on the testimony that we heard. And the biggest thing about the testimony that we heard is we only heard from employers or groups representing employers or nonprofits and think tanks that are geared toward businesses. We did not hear from any unemployed workers who have tried to navigate this system on their own. There's been a lot of groups that have popped up about how to advocate for yourself in the unemployment sphere, and a lot of groups and people and leadership from that have come up. We didn't hear from any of them. We did not hear from, for example, the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, who studies locally some of our workforce trends. We didn't hear from some of the people sitting out in this audience. Looks like a group of men and women in labor who are significantly impacted by changes in our unemployment system. And then one more thing that I'll mention is one of the recommendations is consider the reforms recommended in House Bill 317 from the 2019 session. We didn't hear a lot about that. We heard maybe some pieces that I know because I was a member in 2019 that were contained in House Bill 317 from 2019, but we didn't go through it, and I don't think we reached any consensus on that point. And if you remember House Bill 317, it cuts benefits. It cuts the number of eligible weeks for workers who have lost their job through no fault of their own. And I really don't think that we should have used this opportunity to look at our unemployment insurance system and use that as a way to cut benefits for workers. So that's going to be my input on these recommendations. I would be in favor, I'm glad you mentioned, Mr. Chair, that we could have another meeting and make some of these recommendations more specific. I would definitely be in favor of that.
Thank you, Representative. But we were open to anyone coming. We were actually reaching out to people, and you were had a chance to discuss anything that you wanted as any member of the committee, and we would have entertained anyone that you suggested coming. And that's why I've also opened it up for you and everyone else, that if they have something they want to put as an addendum to this, we're open to that, because we were not excluding or intending to exclude anyone. We worked with the Labor Cabinet extensively, even behind the scenes, to try to get this right, and certainly not looking at the unemployed people and excluding them. That's what we're here for. I take note of what you say. I'm not totally in agreement with you, but thank you for your comments. And Chairman Weber has something to say.
To my knowledge, Representative Cantrell, I don't think that you ever reached out to me asking that any group or individual participate in this committee. I've had other legislators who have legislation that may come up in the 2022 session approach me about bills in the Economic Development Committee, members of the minority party. I've worked with those members and I've afforded them the opportunity. I think probably, and I would have entertained the idea of any group that you wanted to have come and speak today, because the entire purpose of this task force, when it was included in House Bill 413, was to look at the unemployment system, which we now have had two significant hits to: 2009 recession and then 2020 COVID. I'm not sure this system can withstand another hit, and we needed to make sure that there were reforms in place to proceed forward. I have met with Secretary Link, I met with Secretary Roberts, I met with various folks to discuss how we approach this, and I was very open to that, to those discussions. Anybody that wanted to come forward, I would say that probably this report, if you had approached me, we could have had some of those things included in it. I'm not sure that was the objective. I think maybe it had more to do with political theatrics today, and that's unfortunate.
Senator Yates.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting us be part of this task force. It provides a very important role, and I think we're correct that we don't want to politicize this. There's been one thing that we have seen over and over, and is that our working families have been hurt, devastated. My colleague from Jefferson County, she hit a lot of great points, and I really respect her passion and her stance, and I share in some of this, and I won't repeat it for redundancy. What I do, I think we all agree, is that right now we do have a problem getting people back to work. I think everyone has agreed, and that we want to be doing that. My worry is that right now we talk about how we could reform the UI tax, how that we can, the system, how we could reform it, but we don't have a lot of specifics in there. And we did take some time in this committee, and we've heard from different people, and we've heard to their specific issues, mostly from all of our emails. As senators and legislators, we're getting those calls, right? For those working families that are hurting, those people that are struggling. But what are the specifics that we really are going to do to change? My worry is we don't want to put misinformation. And sometimes when we have real vague things go out there without those specifics, then people become confused about what the overall system is. And UI, the unemployment, is not a force of welfare. It's not that. It is literally people who have been working families who've paid into a system, there when we have economic downturn. They're there to be picked back up. And really, from all of us have taken economics classes, we know when we hit a recession, when things happen, it actually benefits us as not only Commonwealth, but the nation, from hitting the devastation of that. Whenever we have those downturns, some of that offsets. Now, I agree, and I think that anybody here will agree that we got to have that balance, and we're looking for how we can make things better. My really concern here is the lack of specifics that we've laid out, because I think this committee has done a good job as far as trying to educate ourselves and listen, reach out, listen to our constituents, turn these emails. But if we don't have the specifics in there, there's a problem. And some of those things that we can do is to make our workforce here better, and we failed to do that. We know that when some of us went to Tampa at the National Conference of Legislators, and we know one thing that works is increasing the minimum wage, increased participation in there. We don't want to have decreased OSHA protections. We don't want things that endanger workers, because we want Kentucky to be a place where we protect our workers, where they're safe, where they're back into the workforce. And now we always have a balance here. And so I hope that as we get back into the legislature this session, that we will actually look at some of the details that we talked about. And again, I think that we want to stay away from the politics and the rhetoric and look at how we actually can do that. I think that those worker protections is one thing. The minimum wage, all these things that we should be doing even before to get people back to work. I am getting those calls, and I think Mr. Chair and Co-Chair and members of the committee, I think you are as well. And so I hope that we can kind of work to improve those things, and also know where, in fact, we're getting the foundation for government accountability and things, and look and see where some of those bias may be in those reports, and try to avoid going down that tunnel. I appreciate you letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Yates. Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make one correction to Senator Yates' comments, and that is that workers do not pay into the unemployment system. That is something that is provided by companies that are making sure there is a safety net for their workers. Companies pay into the unemployment trust fund. We have had to supplement that with federal money and, stuff that's come through, and fortunate enough to have some of that federal money to help. We've had to borrow from the federal government in order to pay the benefits that have been paid. And of course, we've talked about the fraud that has existed, where we've got something in that on the recommendations trying to take care of that. But let me just say, I think companies get a bad rap, but that is something they provide, and to make sure that their workers are taken care of as far as unemployment is concerned. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, because sometimes they get portrayed as the bad guy. The other thing that I would say about the minimum wage, that's something that the market is taking care of. In fact, everybody is being forced to raise their wages right now. And I think over in Clay County, I was talking to the Senate President yesterday, and he was talking about like a warehouse job that they are having such hard time finding people. They're offering $28 an hour. I mean, that's unbelievable to me, that. And there are, jobs in my area. We have 8,000 open jobs that we don't have people that have the skills or that are willing to take those jobs, and every single one of them are above the $15 range. So I think the market is already taking care of that and is taking care of that, and I don't think we're going to see it going back the other direction. So just to add a couple of caveats to those comments is mine. Thank you.
If I may briefly respond, Mr. Chair.
Well, hold on a minute. Thank you, Senator Wilson. Senator Yates, briefly, please, since you've already spoken.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Wilson, thank you for the clarification if I misspoke. As an employer, I definitely pay into that tax. I'm obviously it's only being paid for my working employees that are actually working to the system. So it would come out of my payroll deduction tax that I pay into for that employee who is working, and it only applied for those employees that are working. And we are absolutely agreement on the same thing, is that we're seeing high dollar jobs right now being offered, and an inability to fill those. And I think it's our failure to act right now that we have suppressed the workers' ability to earn income for so long, in Kentucky being such a poor state and so many people dependent on the system for failure to be able to earn a living wage. And so we are seeing some of those market trends. But the reason that we're having the devastation, I think, is by even some of those conferences we all had the benefit of sitting in nonpartisan committees in Tampa, was talking about our inability to act on the minimum wage. Is now we're feeling the effects of that. And so you're right. I do believe the market will ultimately start to sort those things out. But our failure to act is definitely going to have some growing pains. And as an employer who has trouble finding employees right now, I sure wish that we would get off our butts and do the right thing. Thank you.
Co-Chair Weber.
I just want to make one additional comment. At some point during the interim on this process, when we were talking about unemployment, and all of us had constituents that had contacted us about issues related to making appointments, whether those were in person or virtual over the phone type of contacts with the unemployment office. And I would like to point out that Representative Sharp contacted me with a constituent from his district. That gentleman drove all the way from the Ashland area to testify to this committee about the trouble that he was having, and that re-emphasized the issue that was facing real Kentuckians, the folks that live in our districts that were having trouble. And if I recall correctly, he brought a check that day. I think he had been paid a few cents on that. But the opportunity was given for individuals to come and testify before this committee. Representative Sharp took advantage of that and had one of his constituents come. And I think that it was good information for this committee to hear and know. So for the record, I wanted that clarified and reminding members of the committee.
All right. I want to make a couple comments. And first thing, and I've said this over and over again, the people on unemployment insurance are not moochers. There are people that have actually been working and through no fault of their own are unemployed because they don't get unemployment insurance if they weren't working. So these are people, these are hardworking people that through no fault of their own have been unemployed. So what we're doing here is to try to make the system in the future work for them and for the businesses and for Kentucky. One thing that we're pushing, and we were pushing before this pandemic, is for workforce training. The skills training is we lack in Kentucky and nationwide, and we want to help that. That's why we're turning the career centers into actual career centers where people can go and get the education and training they need to get a job or to get a better job. And we're here to help people, and that's what this report is hopefully trying to do, is give ideas and suggestions for legislators to maybe come forth with a bill with input with others. And we, like I said before, and Chairman Weber has too, we encourage people to get involved. I'm still encouraging them, Senator Yates, if there's something you want to come forth quickly for an addendum to this before we present it, even after this meeting, we'll look into that. So, has there been anyone here to sign up to talk today? No? So I would give the Labor Cabinet an opportunity to say a little something if you'd like, Morgan, before. She would not. We've spoken often, so we appreciate your input, and we will appreciate your input again if we come up with a bill. Did you want to? You want some close? You want the last word? All right. Representative Pratt, we will give you the last word.
Thank you very much, Chairman Nemus. As we conclude this, and I've written this down, so excuse me for reading this, I'll make sure I get it right. As we conclude the special committee looking at the state of unemployment insurance in Kentucky, I want to reiterate, it is my opinion that labor currently does not have the authority to oversee UI. They may have been given the authority to oversee Wagner Pisner, but not UI. Further, I want to make clear that the KY Career Centers fall under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and are responsible for the local workforce boards, not the Education Workforce Development Cabinet or labor. It is my opinion that there continues to be a lot of issues around staffing, management, duplication of services, and lack of coordination with the local workforce boards that will continue to hold us back in solving the unemployment insurance issues as well as other workforce issues we have in Kentucky. Merging education, workforce with labor, or hiring 99 additional staff is not the answer. Further, I have not received an answer to what funding source was used to support the KY Chamber's new job portal, and still do not understand why it cannot merge with the UI system we have now. It is a duplication of services and is funded with federal dollars awarded by the state. We are at a critical point in Kentucky with the recent announcement of plant locations and expansions. If we do not get our arms around all these issues, we will not meet the obligation of providing a trained workforce in the next 5 years. I do want to thank Ms. Eve. She's reached out to me a couple times to talk about the upgrade to the computer system. Unfortunately, it's like peeling an onion. There's so many layers. I have not had time to actually get all the work done. But I want to iterate, I'm concerned with the build up from the ground up. I will give you an example in licensing. They had a system called Avis. They upgraded to Cavis. It is 8 years in the making and still not finished. So with that, I'm concerned that we will be 8 years out. This system will not be built. We'll still be where we are, and hopefully this does not come again. So thank you guys very much for allowing me to speak.
Sorry, you're not going to have the last word, but thank you very much for. First, Senator Alvarado, would you like to make a motion to add that?
I would. I'm trying to think if it needs to be worded, maybe perhaps with a caveat of we're permitted within federal statutes or federal regulations to allow. I would recommend that LRC staff that are willing to volunteer to assist could be cross-trained to assist the Department of Labor or whatever department this can be put under, either currently or in the future.
That's fine. It doesn't have to be exact because in a bill or when it's done, it would have to be exact. So you're just making that recommendation to be added to the report. So you've made that motion. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, well, we will add that. I have someone in the audience that is asked to speak, and I will allow them a short period of time. Jeff Wiggins from the AFL-CIO. Did you not want to speak? Okay, all right. Well, you can talk to Senator Yates on that. He said you did. Okay.
I received a message saying.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. So, oh, you do? Okay. Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Jeff Wiggins, Secretary Treasurer of the Kentucky State AFL-CIO. Look, we had the problem several years back, and we made a deal to do something with the unemployment system, and the money didn't get moved to where it needed to be done and what needed to be done to fix the system. And look, any changes that you make to unemployment is going to hurt working people in Kentucky. They even if you add up what the chamber suggests, you're still losing 50% over the last 5 weeks. You got 125% the first 5 weeks, 100% 5 weeks, 75% the next 5 weeks, and that evens out to 100%. But the last 5 weeks, you're only going to get 50%. People can't function on 50% of unemployment. People are hurting out there. We run a small business. I put I pay the taxes, I pay the UI and everything. Well, I had been paying 1.8%. Found out that it's dropped to 0.7% and it's lowered. Now, I have $3,500 banked in the unemployment system from the Kentucky State AFL-CIO that we have extra in the unemployment system. So when I hear small businesses are hurting and they can't and this and that with the unemployment, when it's dropped to 0.7%, I mean from 1.8, I don't see that there's a problem with money now. The money is flowing back in there. What we have a problem with is people are willing to work, but they're not going to work for free anymore. People that wait on tables, they get $2 and something an hour plus tips. They want a living minimum wage. And that's the problem with the unemployment system. And that's the problem why people don't go back to work, is because it's not a job problem. It's not some of it's not a skill problem. The problem is pay. And like you said, it's going to fix itself. It's going to fix itself. If people want people to work, then pay them.
Thank you very much. Now, this is just a report with recommendations, and in the report, it shows that that's the Chamber's recommendation. Now, when we come with a bill, then we would absolutely like to hear from you. And as far as the pay and that, this unemployment system can't do anything about what people pay. It's only when you're not employed. And as far as the tear down, well, that still could be in discussion. So, and we appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
My name's Chad Conley. I'm a resident of Catlicksburg. I'm the Rapid Response Coordinator for District 8 at the United Steelworkers. So I handle legislative action for Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, and Virginia. I think
Is your microphone on?
but what I was saying was I don't think it's been considered what this is going to do to some industries, like blacktopping, for instance. We have a lot of workers in the blacktop industry. It shuts down every winter. The blacktop industry, the blacktop plants shut down, blacktopping stops. When weather warms back up, those people go back to work. And a lot of times, that is a lot longer than what is being recommended in your, or the Chamber's recommending in your report. And I think there's instances that needs to be looked at. We can certainly understand the need to prevent fraud and all that, but I would just add that to what my colleague said, that there are some industries that workers are going to leave if they can't rely on unemployment in their downtime every year.
Thank you. Chairman Weber.
Is it Mr. Conley, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the bill from 2019, and I think you may be referencing indexing is something that the task force looked at. If you're a seasonal worker and it's understood that there's a layoff period there, that doesn't affect you.
Well,
much like the Ford plant in Louisville area, they have their standard shutdowns, and they have in the past we've excluded those groups that have the seasonal shutdowns where it's expected.
Yes, we did that there's a Class A and a Class B, and the Class B was I think the Class A was you're not expected to go back to work, and the other there is a job that is waiting for you, like the Ford plant and and they were excluded from the tear down in his bill. Okay. That is true. Yeah, but thank you for the point. All right, seeing no further discussion, we will vote on whether this report goes forward. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. We will pass this through. And everyone on the committee, very quickly, if you have something that you want to add to it, please do contact Chairman Weber or me.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to. Since we do have a dissenting vote, we will call roll call on this. So,
Senator Alvarado,
Aye.
Senator Storm, Senator Wilson, Senator Yates,
I vote no. May I explain my vote?
yes. That was a pretty good explanation. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to take go ahead and go through with it, and when you get back online, we'll let you explain at that time. Thank you.
Representative Brainskin,
Aye.
Representative Cantrell,
May I explain?
Cast your vote and then explain.
I'm casting in explaining a no vote, and I really have enjoyed being a member of this task force. And there's a lot. This report is fairly thick, and there was a lot to go through yesterday. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Probably the best parts of it are the parts from the recommendations from the auditor. Those were mostly critiquing internal practices of the labor cabinet, a lot of which we've heard that they've corrected or implemented procedures to try to correct those, and they're things we can't legislate anyway. Like I discussed in my earlier comments, my larger concerns are the testimony that we heard to get to the recommendations that we got today, and then my concern that the recommendations might lead to legislation that implements cuts for unemployed workers. Unemployed workers who rely on unemployment insurance are workers who lost their job through no fault of their own. This all came to light a lot during the pandemic, but there are people every day who lose their job through no fault of their own or lose their job seasonally, as we just heard from the testimony. These are people who are going to return to the workforce. They're looking for work. They want to work. These are not the people that we need to be penalizing. These are not people who we need to incentivize to work. These are groups that have just had, a run of bad luck or become sort of a part of this pandemic that we're living through right now. And through no fault of their own, they're in these circumstances. And some of these recommendations, I think, would have a disproportionate impact on our brothers and sisters in the far east and far western parts of the states where there is higher than average unemployment, and minorities who suffer from higher than average unemployment. So we have to think about those groups of people when we implement recommendations like this. And when we take the time for ourselves and the taxpayers' time to have these meetings, we need to come up with more specific recommendations than what we're recommending. So that's, I don't want to reiterate too much of what I said earlier, but those are the main reasons that I vote no today.
Representative Pratt,
Aye.
Representative Sharp,
Aye.
Co-Chair Nemes,
Aye.
Co-Chair Weber.
Yes.
So we will be passing this to the legislature, and a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I think I was cut off before.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Senator Yates.
No, I logged back in.
I kind of liked your response, though. It was pretty good.
All right. I can amend it however I like later.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to first of all, thank the committee for the time and effort. At this time, I do make a no vote, but with the hope that we can get there. And I appreciate you leaving it open for us to be able to send some recommendations over, and hopefully we can resolve some of those issues we still have outstanding. So thank you.
Now I will entertain that motion.
Second.
We are adjourned.